Hey guys, welcome back to Warren C Street Photography Podcast. We are on episode number 6 of season 2. So I'm pretty excited to keep this going and provide you guys hopefully some content in and around street photography and sometimes general photography topics that you guys are enjoying, can get something out of, use for yourself as you pretty much work on your own street photography skills and enhancements and so forth. And I'm really looking forward to, or look forward to, I should say, to all of the feedback I get from you guys and all the interaction that we do get on the channel, especially on the YouTube channel when it comes to the comments. And for those of you who are on the podcast outlets that I use, like Spotify and Apple and so forth, definitely make sure you subscribe there, just like you folks on the YouTube channel. Subscribe if you want to continue to get some wonderful podcasts from me. I try to do these once a month at the moment so that I can get the content out to you guys. And just for those of you that are new to Warren C Street Photography Podcast, I tend to talk about 3 topics in and around street photography. I talk about a trend of some sort and how did I think that affects us in the street photography community, or sometimes the general photography community, as well as a book that you might want to add to your collection and the who you're repping category and then or section. And then I go into talking about gear as it I think it pertains to us and what I think we can glean from that topic and that you can probably use for yourselves. And hopefully again, with all of the topics that I do or cover, I should say, every episode, you guys are getting something out of it. And for those of you who don't, let me know. Because it does help me in making sure I bring some worthy content to you guys that you would want to interact with me and the community on the podcast. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get into this one with the trend. And honestly, this one really hits me more than I think it may others. And I might be wrong, so you let me know. This is kind of a confession, if you will. But for those of you who do follow me and maybe even hit my Instagram at Warren C01, you probably noticed that, I don't really post as much as I used to when I first started on social media, specifically Instagram, because I started noticing that I was getting caught up like some of us do and the whole social media thing, wanting to get likes, wanting to be noticed for work that I do. And then it was starting to push me in direction to produce content that isn't the content I wanted to go after when it comes to my street photography and my photography in general. I don't want to be really pushed by social media and in some cases the algorithm and bots that may be on there on the type of content that I should put on there to get likes. Um, I don't do my street photography really to make money on it, to make a living off of it. So it's not as important for me to really post or have that be the reason I walk out the door with the camera, right? I wanted to get back to this year. And it kind of started at the end of last year, around Thanksgiving, Christmas time. I wanted to get back to the reasons why I actually go out with a camera on the streets and produce content. And for me, that is for the enjoyment of going out and doing just that, being social, getting out and stretching my legs, walking, being active, and in the process, being able to produce content or take images of things happening on the street. I tend to gravitate more to taking images of people because I love interacting with people. I'm somewhat of a sociable person, as I've said on the previous podcast. And I like to be able to go out and enjoy the experience of meeting people, taking images on the street, sometimes of those people, and then going about my business after that. It really isn't about me taking an image of something happening on the street that will garner notice, that will garner attention, or garner, if excuse me if I'm saying it right, attention. It's really not about that, and for most of us, and some of you may admit it, some of you may not. But I'm here to let you know I'm giving my own testimony, if you will. That was happening to me a lot last year. I noticed, and I wanted to kind of get away from that of being pushed to produce content um, for the masses that isn't what I want to do. And honestly, it really started to hit me that way with the YouTube channel as well, to be honest with you. And you guys have probably noticed some differences in that. Hell, if you've been following me, you notice a lot of differences from the fact that even with my hair, I've done some things that I normally wouldn't do because, I have the opportunity to try things and experience things that I've not done before or have held off because of one dumb reason or another, where now I'm more apt to say, no, let's do this and see what happens. And it really isn't going to affect anything other than you knowing, so thus, as you see, my locks are now in a barrel roll design, and I kind of like it right now because it's actually keeping them tight and neat to my head, and it gives a little bit more cleaner look. And the biggest thing is, and you guys may laugh, but I could put my glasses on without snagging my hair. Yeah, I know, you know, little things that keep us going in life. But when it comes to social media, or comes to the fact of wanting to be noticed for the wrong things, I mean, that's what was happening to me. And I don't know if that happens to a lot of you guys, but I'm here to say, you don't have to let that happen. You can have reasons, unless that is the reason, where you can go out and enjoy yourself for the reason you went out with that camera. And that's what we need to remember in a lot of cases. This may transcend, excuse me, photography in some cases on what I'm saying, but you know, we do need to look at the real reasons why we do things and not get caught up in the noise or distractions or as I've heard in the past, clout chasing, if you will, that really doesn't represent the why for us in the first place. So that's the trend that I want to start seeing again, not just with myself, but even with some of the people I deal with. But think about that for yourself. Is that something you notice you're doing that you don't like? If it is something where you're doing because you want to, yeah, keep doing it. Hopefully you're successful and be you. But for me, I think, and for a lot of us, that be you part really comes in, and I think we should see more of the trend when it comes to like our street photography, that we're doing it for the love of why we go out and do street photography, not that because we have this secondary reasoning, like wanting to be noticed is the reason why we're doing it. Which again, for me, I started to get caught up in that with wanting to grow my social media and putting images up that gets the most likes, and it's just not me. So if you are caught up in that trend, and it is a trend because it does change, and it can change, you guys let me know. You in the comments, what do you think about this? How far off am I? Is this just a me thing? Is it just a me thing? It's not you, it's me. You let me know, okay? So when we get into who you're repping, as you guys know, I tend to pick books that will increase, or artists that increase my knowledge, skill, enhance my skill around street photography, whether that is how they use light, how they use color, how they use the environment around them. And it's generally been mostly street photography related, but every once in a while I've done in this season and a half that or I've been doing this podcast for, I will present a book where it's solely about the photography and what pushed me to get this book and make me think that this Who You're Reppin' artist is worthy of a spot in your library. And today we are repping. Now I couldn't find out where he was born. I know it's born in America, and we're going to say we're representing America in this instance, but we're representing Mr. Gregory Heisler. Mr. Gregory Heisler, and the book I have here with me, which is Gregory Heisler 50 Portraits. I think you guys, if you don't already know about Mr. Heisler, I'll teach you, let you know a couple of things about him. But I'm gonna tell you, if you do happen to snag this book, you won't be disappointed in what this book delivers and how Mr. Heisler delivered the images and the content in this book. Because if I further read the caption on the front, the title on the front, it says stories and techniques from a photographer's photographer. And I was like, okay. So when I was out and about looking at new content to add, and I saw this book and went through it, I was blown away. So Mr. Gregory Heisler was born in 1954. He's an American photographer known for his evocative portrait work, often found on the cover of magazines such as Time magazine. Well, I laughed when I saw that part because I was like, when I looked at some of the pictures, I was like, wow, that was that guy. Um, Now it says here, for which he has produced a number of man, person, and people of the year covers. Now, that's not just the only accolades he has. He shot presidents, he shot famous people. I think one of the funniest stories I read about Mr. Heisler was that he once had his presidential photographer credentials revoked with George W. Bush because he did an image that was a double exposure where it had George's head faced this way and that way. And I guess the article that was written where the image was published in wasn't a very positive one. So he revoked his privileges and eventually got the ban lifted, and he's taking more images of George Bush, and there are more images of him after that in this book. But what I like about the book is, and I'm going to go to the very cover image right here. It's a full double spread or widespread or a double page, whatever they call it. But I love this image. And what I love about it is not only what he's done in the images to try to get you to look at what you think is the story and what you think may be going on. Like in this image of this gentleman, you see the wrinkles, you see the worry in his face, you see the age in his eyes. This is a color image. I think this is a color image. Yeah. No, this might be black and white. But I'm trying to sit here and think of what this person's thinking about. Where is the worry or the sadness or try to understand what life experiences this person may have went through to get this face like this and the wrinkles and the time he's had here. And I flip to the next page because this is the first image, and Mr. Heisler talks about the subject and then gives the techniques, thoughts on the techniques on how he created the image, and I think it's phenomenal. Um, and that's why I think it's phenomenal. Not only does Mr. Heisler give me a wonderful image, he tells me how he did it, and then I can look at those techniques and see how I can implement those techniques in my own photography captures, even if it's by chance on the street, or if I decide I want to ask somebody for a portrait and pose them. I can think about some of the techniques I've come across in some of the images he has in his book, and I think that's what makes this book an awesome must-have in any photographer's collection. Not just because of the greatness I think in a lot of these images and how they're done, but the fact that he gives you the techniques around how he did it. He talks about the techniques. I've never seen any photographer do that in the book that I have gone through so far. And he has images here with presidential figures, like I said, other country leaders, and then he has images in here with, in essence, as far as I'm concerned, superstars from Muhammad Ali to what Denzel Washington, and he literally talks about how he went about producing that image, from color images to black and white images, whatever he did or needed to use, color or black and white, to get the end result. And then he tells you about what he did to get there. And again, I think that is phenomenal. Now, he is still alive, which is great. He does have a Instagram page. I don't know how active it is. The last time I saw a post on it, it was like 2020. So somebody may be monitoring that for him, but I don't know. I will put that in the description for the YouTube, and I'll put it in the description for those that follow this podcast on the podcast channels I publish to, as well as his website, and which gives some bio info and some other info and contact info for Mr. Heisler. But again, I thought it was hysterical when I started looking through this book and saw some of these images. I was like, I've seen that image somewhere, and to realize that he's done a number of time covers and things like that. Um, and I think again, this would be a great addition to anybody's collection, not only just for the images, but for the fact that he goes about telling you about the techniques he utilized to create them. And that I can then look at those techniques and see how I can incorporate them into my own photography is phenomenal, especially with what I like to try to do when I'm taking images on the street. So there you go. That's who we're representing. Again, I was unfortunate to find where he was born in the US and so forth. I guess I could dig a little deeper, but I did want to just go ahead and give you guys this information. Again, it'll be in the descriptions for this. But you guys let me know what you think. For those of you who might already know about Mr. Heisler, let me know what you think in the comments about his work, about what he's done in his career. And if you have any other of his other books and what you think about them, I think that'd be awesome for all of us to know. So that is our Who You're Repping person for this episode. Now, when I get to gear, one of the things that I have not talked about and I've waited to talk about because I generally don't go through politics on or political topics, if you will, on my channel for YouTube or on this podcast. But this one, it does have some overtones toward politics because of what it is, and that's tariffs and how tariffs is affecting camera gear and how that may have you decide on what you may be doing now when it comes to new purchases of camera gear. So last episode, as you guys know, I talked about the Fujifilm X half and about how I loved it. That would have been a film camera, and I would have been all on board of that. Now, I did tell you about how the price to me was up there, and a lot of that has to do with the tariffs. I know without the tariff situation that we're going through here in the US, when it comes to imports coming in, that camera would have been a lot cheaper than the asking price it's at now. And then if you have been paying attention to Fuji's recent announcements as of last week, they just introduced or announced, I should say, the XE5, which is the predecessor to this camera, which is the XE4 here. This camera is fantastic. You see how, for those of you on the YouTube channel, you see how little this camera is? I got the Peak Design micro clutch on there, and I find with all the way up to the kit lens, not the new one, the older one, that this camera is still comfortable to hold with this micro clutch. So for those of you who ever wondered, about the micro clutch on small cameras, this is it. I love it. I've used this on a number of cameras that I've had that are in this frame or this form size factor, like the X100 series, the Sony RX1R2 that I had on loan for a birthday gift from the wife, which was awesome, and so forth. And I think this micro clutch is fantastic. But let's get past that gear and get to where I'm talking about with its predecessor that's coming out, which is the XE5. Now, most of you, like me, thought, okay, great, XE5 is coming out. Most of the specs that was talked about it were right on point from Fuji rumors, from the 40 megapixel sensor to it being having some features on it that are equivalent to the XT5 and the X106. And then it even goes on to their website. If you go to that website, it has the picture of 4 cameras. It included the XT50 and the difference between them. But the thing that got me was the price. This camera, the XT4, when I got it, that my son's been using this until he finally just gave it back. This camera was $1,000. And a lot of people probably felt that the XE5 was going to be close to that price, because generally that's what it is when they release. They're similar in price from the cameras is proceeding. And this sucker is the same price of an XT5. So the first thing I thought of is well, why would I get an XE5 if it's the same price as an XT5? I would just get the XT5, unless you don't want an SLR style camera and you want something more rangefinder style. Then of course, there you go, you would get the XE5, because essentially from what I can see from the specs, they're the same camera as far as specs and all of that stuff. But as far as its exterior look, of course, rangefinder style versus SLR style. But then the curious thing for me was, that's if you wanted an interchangeable camera. If you didn't want it and you wanted something that was fixed lens, good luck in trying to get an X106, which was about $100 cheaper, if I remember the prices correctly, than getting the XE5 or the XT5. But your availability issue there sucks, and that makes that camera a hard to get camera. And then bam, you got the price jump for people who are charging based on supply and demand, right? And that's one of the things that I'm also starting to see as a result of the tariffs. Not just prices going up because of the tariffs, I see prices going up because of supply and demand. I've seen on certain websites where things like a used brand camera, we'll say, go to Leica. I've seen a Leica Deluxe 8 used for far more money than I've seen used or brand new price, right? Same thing for Fuji. I've seen that for them, and I've seen it for some other brands as well. So I say all of this to say, with all the stuff going on with tariffs, and then the fact of supply and demand is now coming into effect because companies have cut back. I think I heard something where Fuji is cut back because they're trying to relocate their factories and stuff so that they're taking that hit, I guess, if you will, to move their stuff and be able to avoid their customers having to deal with taxes, and they've reduced their volume right now so they can relocate and bring it back up if that's true. But how does that affect us with all this stuff that's going on? How does that affect you? For me, it means I am looking at the gear I have and I say, for this XE4 in my hand now, um, is there anything wrong with this? Do I really need to upgrade? Is this giving me what I need? And if you're like me and can say yes, like I can say, well, I'm gonna hold off. I don't know how good that is for Fuji though. I don't know how good that is for US trade. Um, it's you can say it might be good for my wallet, but hey, let's be honest. There are other things in life that we need to deal with financially, and that doesn't center itself around camera gear, gas, right? So that's me. But what about you? There are other scenarios out there. Um, what if you're in a situation where, unlike me, you do make more of a livelihood off of your photography? Um, and well, how does that affect you? Do you say, I need to be able to pay to play, and you deal with the tariffs, and your business, is that a business write-off? But does it mean you, like me, you look at your current gear and you say, I think I'm good at what I got for a little bit longer? Or do you realize, no, I can't wait and I'm gonna have to pay to play? Where do you fall in that when it comes to tariffs in your camera gear? Like with the XC5 and the X half, with those being so much higher, are you putting it on pause because of the price and the tariffs? Or maybe you're putting it on pause because there's a supply and demand situation happening right now with a lot of the brands. Leica, I can't remember the last time I saw a new Leica in store at any of my local stores that sell Leica. I don't know if I've seen it on the Leica site. Not that I want a Leica Deluxe 8, but if I did, yeah, they're hard to find. Um, Even some other things that even from the Leica group. I also shoot Nikon, and I can say, at least right now with Nikon, availability isn't that bad. But again, they also don't, if I'm, and correct me in the comments somewhere, I don't believe they make all of their gear out of China, where we have the heaviest hit on tariffs. So that could be it too. And Nikon has always been a powerhouse in making sure they're keeping up with supplies for the demand, right? So, but how has tariffs affected your buying scenario? Are you paying to play because you have to, or are you rethinking the gear you have and say, "Ah, I think I'm good for a little, I can hold off"? For me right now, I was happy or lucky enough, I should say, to get a lot of my new gear well before tariffs went into play. So it didn't hit me as hard. Now that tariffs are hitting harder, I can say that, well, I'm happy with the gear I just recently purchased, and I'm good for a while, as long as the gas doesn't hit. But again, I'm not in a situation where I need to pay to play. So if you are, you guys let me know, where are you at when it comes to the tariffs, and as the tariffs have affected the camera gear industry, especially where you're starting to see now the supply demand bump on stuff that's used open box over retail, because you can't get retail. All that's out there is used. And you see X106s that cost $1,600, we'll say roughly, it's going on eBay for $2,000. How has that affected your spending when it comes to new gear? So let me know in the comments. I like to see what the community is, how you guys have been dealing with that. And that really is to me something that is going to continue to be a situation we have to deal with, because tariffs don't, at this point in the U.S., don't seem like they're going away anytime soon with the way the current administration is doing what they're doing. So there you go. Well, that was the cast, guys. And again, when it comes to the topics we covered today, again, let me know in the comments what you guys' feedback, thoughts, questions on it are. Whether you thought there were some things I missed and could add. For the trend thing, let me know. Are you or what are the things that you do that you feel is hurting your photography? Like for me, it was definitely social media, and I noticed the difference in how I've changed, not only in this channel, but definitely in my just outings for street photography and going out and doing the stuff I love to do when I take the camera out the door. And then as far as who we're repping today, guys, again, if you do pick up this book, let me know what you think about this book. Let me know what you think about how Mr. Heisler set this up to basically give a tutorial along with these images and how he captured what he got. And if you feel you'll use that yourself, I think the book is fantastic. I think it'll be a wonderful addition for anybody who gets it. And then as far as tariffs, again, this is an ongoing saga. I think this XE4 I'm holding up in my hand is a wonderful camera, and 26 megapixels on this sensor is fantastic. So yeah, I won't be one of those unfortunate people looking at an XE5 anytime soon. But I think based on my current gear collection, I don't know if that's a camera I need right now anyway. So you guys enjoy. This is Father's Day weekend, and I'm doing this. It's actually Father's Day. And so you guys, again, have a great Father's Day for those of you. Hopefully you have a good week as well. And I'll see you guys on the next cast.